Hi, Ryan J. Glamour, creator of Restricted-RPS. So let's say 2 days after this video comes out, there's gonna be a beta test event of Restricted-RPS, and I want you to come try out the game. You should follow me on Twitter, and on the day I'll post where to get a client and a server address, and yeah. So if you don't know what Restricted-RPS is, it's you play rock paper scissors with a finite amount of each move. So you have a limited amount of each rock and paper and scissors, and then if you wanna really know what Restricted-RPS is, you should probably watch Kaiji. The game is based on the first game in Kaiji, which is, if you watch the anime, it's like, I don't know, 10 episodes. But it's not exactly the same. And I just want to talk a little bit about the differences, because that's one of the things that comes up, is that a lot of people say, who know the game from the anime, they don't understand how it can actually work as an online multiplayer game. I just want to explain some of the differences, because it can work, it does work. The reason it works is because I made a lot of changes to the game. Because, yeah, the game in Kaiji is very much about people in debt and people with their lives on the line. But underneath that, it is a game with a lot of strategic elements. Basically, to make this game work for online multiplayer is the same as if in Kaiji they decided to do the game again with all repeaters. If you remember in the anime, the repeaters... I should mention the spoiler alert. If you haven't watched Kaiji, you should probably go watch Kaiji instead of listening to me talk and spoil Kaiji for you. Kaiji is great anime, great manga series too. But Restricted-RPS really sticks out as a great game design to me. I mean, a lot of the games in the Kaiji series can be broken down into like just cheating and counter cheating. That's what E-card is. Then there's the dice game, and there's a mahjong game later that's all about cheating. It's cheating and counter cheating and meta counter cheating, and it gets kind of ridiculous. And I guess the bog is kind of cheating, but I would say that goes even further into like it's like a bank heist. I like that. So anyways, the differences between Restricted-RPS and Gentai Genkin in the anime. So the first big differences are that there's no money in Restricted-RPS. In Kaiji, they all got a choice of war funds, and then they had a time limit, 4-hour time limit in Kaiji, and the debt would increment every 10 minutes on their war funds, and that had to do with their original debt that they were coming into the game being wiped clean. So none of that's involved. There's no time limit because none of the purposes of the time limit from the anime would have had much purpose in the video game. Yeah, and so like as a result of those changes, there's no sticking around if you have no cards. The game ends for any player as soon as they run out of cards, the same as if they ran out of stars. No like waiting around for a time limit to end so that they can do an auction or whatever. There's no stars auction. And because of that, we use a turn system that forces regular match participation. So you have to like... the default is like 5 turns, so you can do certain actions within those 5 turns, and those 5 turns take a certain amount of time if you just wait them out. But then you have to be in a match, and because of that change in match participation, well, in Kaiji often has to like trick someone or force someone or cajole someone into having a match with him. There has to be an agreement to have a match, And that makes sense in the anime, in a physical space with lots of players who don't know what they're doing. But in an online multiplayer game where we're gonna expect that everyone's gonna learn the rules, if not before they play, eventually as they play, repeatedly playing. So instead of people agreeing to matches, which would be very hard to pull off regularly, because most people, I mean, if you want to pull off a strategy where you trick someone or use perfect information to take stars from someone to guarantee the win of a match, it's going to be really hard to get someone to agree to have a match with you. So in Restricted RPS, it's only one person needs to want the match to happen. There is a split table option, which allows some limited ability to worm your way out of a match if you don't want to be in one. But most of the time, if someone wants a match to go through, they can force you to play a match with them. And if they're willing to shoulder an amount of risk, they are also able to force you to bet a certain amount too. All of this is meant to reward people who are executing plans. So yeah, so in Kaiji, where there was a lot of scenes of having to convince his opponents to play him for online multiplayer, it was decided that it would be better just to inverse that. Obviously, something that wasn't included from the anime was the like physical and scenario based tricks, like Funai's card tricks and like the glass tapping cheat that they did. There's no loser player's room behind glass. There's nothing like that. Things that did translate over is like the all push stratagem. Funai tricked Kaiji with the whole we're gonna push every match. That strategy didn't work in the anime because Funai was a repeater who needed to have 4 stars to win, but it could have worked otherwise. And in online multiplayer, it could potentially also work, but it depends on the situation. Well, there's 2 modes. There's tournament mode and continuous mode, and in tournament mode, that's just not going to happen because the goal of tournament mode is to get the most stars possible. So things like just, surviving are not really applicable to tournament mode. In continuous mode, everyone has goals. Those goals are private. Only the player knows what their goal is, and they can be very varied. And the goals might not be like as easy as just surviving with what you started with, but there's no standard like there was in Kaiji. In Kaiji there was a standard 3 stars, no cards, you're done. So the push strategy is still possible, just as rare. Let's see, the next big stratagem that took place in Kaiji was the balance stratagem, where Kaiji found a player who was playing a balanced deck of his cards, and he like struck him at the right time where he knew that his choices were limited if he wanted to stay balanced. In Rippus, the information that's released via watching players and the stock board and acquiring information from suits, it's entirely possible to trail a player to find someone who follows a specific pattern to target. And you can even use meetings to facilitate serial matches like Kaiji did. So this strategy, the balanced stratagem, or rather in Rippus, I would probably generalize it more into like targeting players based on patterns, or inversely, you can create patterns in yourself to lead someone into a trap. The game is very much about being able to gather information and tail people, and so yeah, this stratagem definitely holds up. Let's see, the next big stratagem in Kaiji, there was the buyout. Kaiji used money to buy cards off of people, specifically people who were going to finish so that they could leave, and he would have their cards and they wouldn't be around to tell people what cards he got. Now this isn't 100% possible because we do have suits that transmit information. If you do a trade and the server is designed to allow people to see tips for trades, it will show them exactly what you traded, unless we do have an option to turn off tips or to turn off tips where one of the players has left. So it is actually possible to perfectly recreate that, but it's not 100% standard. Kind of depends on what kind of game the admin wants to create. But yeah, you can use trades in meetings to acquire more cards from other players. But you can't use money. There's no money in the game. So, but there's other tradable assets. You can trade stars if they need more stars, or you could simply be willing to take their cards so they can leave. Being able to allow people to leave without playing more matches is usually a win-win situation. It's something Kaiji did against the other guys who were doing the buyout strategy. He bought out the rest of their cards, and then for the last guy, he didn't have a way to get out without playing a match. So Kaiji made him pay him to take his cards. So yeah, that sort of trading schemes still plenty possible and plenty useful. But in Rippus, players can easily see each other's card counts, so it wouldn't be quite so easy to hide a strategy of buying lots of cards. It could be possible with teammates maybe to like spread the cards around them. But otherwise, the stratagem is still possible, and it's kind of enforced in continuous mode, where we have a type of goal called a saves goal, where you have to save a player basically by taking their cards and allowing them to leave the game having completed their goals. It's the most difficult goal to accomplish in the game because it requires someone else to also have achieved a goal. But yeah, there's that. So let's see, the next there was this strategy where they had a shuffle club, I guess. Mass shuffling is not a thing in restricted RPS, but via meetings, of course, you could trade your cards around, so players could conceivably reshuffle each other, keeping in mind that trades don't allow you to see the cards that you're being given until you get them. So shuffling would be interesting, I guess. It's not something we need in restricted RPS because the problem in Kaiji that they needed to shuffle those cards was that no one was willing to do a match against anyone else. In restricted RPS, this has already been taken care of. You have to do a match if one of the players wants a match. I think that's pretty much it for the strategies in Kaiji. He also had that last match with Funai where he forced him to play him. He forced him to bet big, and even though he knew he was going to lose, that was because of the time constraint. If they had any cards left at the end of the time limit, they would lose. So he forced Funai so that he would take his last card off of him. So that would no longer be possible because there aren't time limits anymore. But forcing an opponent to match your bet is, as I mentioned earlier, now commonplace. And with asymmetrical betting also possible. If you have some sort of external leverage to force the opponent to bet higher, you could do that, and it could be just as interesting. So yeah, I think that's all the strategies that took place in Kaiji. There aren't that many. It felt really epic and interesting because of how they did it, but yeah, it's a game with lots of interesting strategies to it, but there could be more, and Restricted RPS does add more. There are lots of obviously changes to how the game plays so that it's better for repeated plays and for people who understand what they're doing. There's also lots of little tiny rules in the cracks that really make big strategic differences. And also we're adding big new features that Restricted RPS did not ever have in Kaiji, like in the version we're going to be playing in 2 days' time, we've got slavery. Slavery is a thing now. The human capital system, or mostly in the game, it's hiring employees. But basically, it's slavery. You buy another player. They cost the amount of stars they have. Those stars go to the server. The server total stars is actually decreasing when you buy someone. And then from that point forward, any stars they win in a match goes to you. Any stars they lose, you don't have any risk. They lose their own stars. There is risk, however, that when they get to 1 star, whenever your stats change, the amount of cards or stars, they get a accurate reading of your information sent to them. So it is helpful to make sure your slaves have at least 2 stars. And there's lots of smaller rules to do with the slavery system, which you can read on the wiki. Yeah, so you should come and try that out. And don't be random. A lot of players from previous beta tests have all made it their mission to see if they can just win by being random. And it doesn't work, and it's going to work even less this time. Because the game has been made even better. The winners in tournaments are always the ones who had a good plan and executed it well. So yeah, we're going to play some Restricted-RPS. Remember, follow my Twitter. My Twitter is @GooGumProduce. So I hope to see you there.